Good evening everyone and welcome to tonight's ordinary meeting of Council on Wednesday the 12th of February 2025, and I declare this meeting open at 6 p.m. I'd like to welcome those present in the gallery and as I said, I declare this meeting open. The City of Swan acknowledges the traditional custodians of this region, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. And we pay our respects to elders past and present and their descendants. Councillor Henderson has declared previously that he is the Liberal candidate for the seat of Swan Hills, and Councillor Dawn has declared that she is a candidate for the Animal Justice Party, and Councillor Howlett declared she is a candidate for the seat of Midland. So this statement is taken to apply to the entirety of the meeting. And Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dawn and Councillor Howlett are not required to identify the candidacy each time they address the meeting. The terms and conditions of entry into this meeting are posted on the door as you enter, and I ask that you please ensure that you have read them prior to attending this meeting and abide by them. Tonight we have councillors in attendance. We have Councillor Jones is absent, and we have Councillor Singh who is on leave of absence, and an apology from Councillor Miles. We have the following declarations tonight. The first one is Mr Stephen Kane, who declared an impartiality interest in item 14.3.3, which is the Responsible Authority Report, Proposed Lifestyle Village, Park Home Park, Part Lot 900 Chittering Road, Lot 9501, Fairchild Street and Lot 9013, Tiger Moth Boulevard, Bullsbrook, which is DA 6922024, as his son is an employee of Planning Solutions. The second declaration of financial proximity interest is Mr Mark Bishop, Executive Director of Community and Wellbeing, declared an impartiality interest in item number 14.3.2, and that is the amendment number 1 to the Bullsbrook Townsite District Structure Plan, which are 21 properties in the proposed Bullsbrook North Urban Expansion Area, DSP 171A, as 2 of the 17 landowners and developers are social acquaintances. And I'll just ask, are there any councillors that need to submit a declaration of interest at this point? No? If there is, please hand that up to the CEO. And we move to public question time. So questions and answers are recorded in the minutes of the meeting and may be summarised in accordance with the Local Government Administration Regulations of 1996. Part 5.1, answers to questions which were taken on notice. So we had quite a few questions, and we had some questions from Mr Dixon Lowe, Robert Bradbury, Mark Church, Gavin Troy and Jan Zek. And all of those questions received for this meeting have been answered, and they've been responded to and have been included in this schedule. All questions and answers will also be published in the minutes of this meeting, and you'll find them listed in the schedule there. Now we move to part 5.2, which is questions relating to reports contained in the agenda. 5.2.1, which is questions of which due notice has been given, and there have been nil. And 5.2.2, questions without due notice for items in the agenda only. And at this stage we also had nil. We have had no registered questions tonight, but if there is anyone in the gallery that has not registered wishing to ask a question relating to items in the agenda, you can do so now. Is there anyone who'd like to ask a question? No? Okay. So 5.3, other questions to items not contained in the agenda, is 5.3.1, questions of which due notice has been given. And we have received questions from Mr Bob Baku, Miss Mary Despot and Ms Jan Zek, and they've also been answered in the schedule, and they'll form part of the minutes there. The next part of tonight's meeting is 5.3.2, which is questions without due notice, and Ms Jan Zek has registered to ask questions. Ms Zek, if you could please come to the podium, and we have 5 questions allowed for each person.
Thank you, Mayor. These questions are regarding Mr Coaten's response to my question 5 at the December meeting. If the vegetation plan supplied by the consultant was rejected, why was it included in the documents that were presented to DWER for the clearing permit?
I'll ask Mr Coton if you could respond, please.
I'll take that on notice.
Thank you.
Why did the city consider several options and still include the one that has been discounted?
Mr Coton?
I'll take that on notice as well.
Does this indicate that the city paid for a discounted option despite it being inadequate?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, I don't believe that it was the case that the city paid for a discounted option. There were a number of options considered.
Thank you. Did you have another question?
Yes. Did the city pay for other options to be generated, or did they come from the staff?
I'll take that on notice.
Thank you. And a fifth question?
Okay. I take it that Mr Van der Linde has the authority to speak for all staff when at the December meeting he confirmed that all staff are familiar with the Black Cockatoo referral guidelines. And this being the case, why has Mr Coton stated in his reply that vegetation will not include species that attract black cockatoos when this is clearly contrary to the guidelines and advice from Keep Carnaby's Flying Project? Contrary to the guidelines and advice from Keep Carnaby's Flying Project, which state that black cockatoo habitat can be included as long as it is kept back from the road edges as recommended.
I'll ask Mr Van der Linde if you'd like to respond.
Well, it won't be from him. Sorry, it was yes,
Sorry, reference.
Mr Coton.
I'll take that on notice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions.
Can we have a copy of those questions?
Would you have a copy that you could provide staff with so we can type them up?
Sent it in. I've
You
already
have.
emailed it.
Thank you. Just being efficient tonight. We now ask if there's anyone else in the gallery that has a question that's not registered that wishes to ask a question. Is there anyone else? No? I'll just see if you can just pop that light off. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. So the next part is part 6, which is public statement time. Registration for public statement time at council meetings was required by 10 a.m. this morning, Wednesday the 12th of February 2025. Public statements are for general matters of the city and not for items on the agenda. And we have had Ms Jan Zek and Mr Dixon Lowe registered to make a statement. Ms Zek, if you'd like to come to the podium.
Thank you.
And you have 2 minutes, thank you.
Mr Coton stated that he is not aware of any environmental assessments that have been undertaken for the entire length of Henley Brook Avenue alignment. That was not any. Despite its proximity to remnant vegetation, black cockatoo habitat, a conservation category wetland, through the middle of Bush Forever 200, Bankshire woodlands of the Swan Coastal Plain threatened ecological community, 3 gas lines, 2 monitoring stations, encroachment of associated earthworks within the compound of the APA gas monitoring station, Priority 1 agricultural soils protected under the Swan Valley Act, and the pick-up, drop-off and parking zones of a primary school with around 400 students, where each and every one is a serious obstacle to actualising this road, along with significant cost implications to the city to resolve them, I would expect that an environmental review for the entire length is well overdue, instead of the piecemeal approach taken by staff that can hardly be called proper planning and proper and orderly planning when so much is at stake and the cost implications so high, and any one of these could render the alignment redundant. This is not the action of a responsible government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Zek. And I'll now ask Mr Dixon Lowe if you'd like to come to the podium, and you have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'm referring to Amendment 9 of the Vines Outline Development Plan. My name's Dixon Lowe, resident of the Vines for the last 12.5 years. The statement is made in behalf of the Vines Residents and Ratepayers Association in respect to item 5.1. Earlier today, a public statement was emailed to each councillor. I will summarise that statement for the purpose of public record in this council. The context is the alternate motion, item 14.3.4 of the meeting of the 11th of December. But I refer you also to an email that was sent to the same councillors and staff on the 7th of June 2024, where we appealed to the city to, one, the integrity of fair and balanced representation is demonstrated. Two, that full due diligence is conducted in respect of the handling of the amendment. Having read the questions, the community have an expectation which we'd like to state to local government. Number one, a full and independent planning assessment of the said application. And number two, accurate acknowledgement of contributions from other stakeholders. These expectations are based on various clauses within planning and development, local planning schemes regulations 2015, and more importantly, possibly, recent WA planning reforms which include tools and templates such as those in the WA Planning Manual Guidance for Structure Plans of August 2023. The community judges that these expectations have not been met. We can list failure of the report against the expectation of a full and independent planning assessment of Amendment 9. Our contention is that consequently, decision makers are not provided with important information and are at risk of approving this amendment without understanding the consequences. Regarding accurate acknowledgement of contributions from other stakeholders, judgment is based on the treatment of public submissions. In general, the under-registration, limited interpretation, and poor presentation in the report has given less than desired value to the use of public consultation.
Thank you.
We
Did you have
substantiate
much
this through...
more to go?
Sorry?
That's okay. We've just hit the 2-minute mark, that's all. So, did you have much more?
I've got just a conclusion, basically, and a point to make. The point is we substantiate this through analysis of submissions of persons living on the fence line or overlooking the R40 and 60 sites. Our analysis extracted 50 submissions from the published schedule and uncovered another 14, that's 28%, that were not registered. And we can see this throughout the submissions. From the recorded submissions, we were able to prioritise concerns, something that the report has not done. We can, that's, I think, sufficient.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lowe, for that deputation. Now we move to part 7, petitions. A petition containing 182 signatures was presented by Mr. Joel Hugo to deny the proposed place of worship planning application DA 4382024, Lot 9, Number 5 of Bennett Street, Caversham, to be tabled at tonight's meeting. The petition will be dealt with in accordance with the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2023 under section 4.42B. And that is B, that the petition be referred to the CEO and a report be submitted to a future council meeting. So I'm going to ask if I can have a mover, please. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And a seconder was Councillor Howlett. Thank you. Is there anyone against? No? It's carried. Thank you. And part 8, deputations. All deputations for items on the agenda were heard at the agenda forum held on the 5th of February 2025. So I moved on to some exciting announcements. The City is pleased to share that the works for the Gidgegannup Men's Shed are set to start next week. We popped up on Sunday for those that were there to see where the new Gidgegannup Men's Shed is going to be located, which is on the court area, and it was quite a hot day, but they're very excited up there to see the progress of this new shed beginning. So their construction of that workshop and trailer garage is going to provide the men's shed and the community members the support that they've been looking for and a place to call home. And it creates this dedicated place of belonging that fosters strong connections and social inclusion. I congratulate the men's shed on the successful application, especially for the Lottery West funding, which has really helped to make this project possible. I think it was 90,000 from Lotteries West and a contribution of 500.
Just over 100,000
from the City of Swan. Now I'll ask if there's any leave of absence, any councillors who require a leave of absence. If there is, please just fill out the form and then hand that up to the CEO. Yeah. Does anyone have any leave of absence? Evening, Councillor Jones. Anyone requiring it? No. Thank you very much. Now we move to confirmation of minutes. Confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting of council, which was held on the 11th of December 2024, I'll just ask if I can have a mover. Add Councillor Dawn, and the seconder was, thank you, Councillor Zanino. And I'll ask, is anyone against? No, that's carried, thank you. Part 12, any business left over from the previous meeting, and there was none. And we move to part 13, adoption of those recommendations that were contained in items not withdrawn. So for the benefit of community members that are observing the meeting, the council uses an en bloc method of decision making. And this means that the agenda items where council supports the officer recommendation are not debated separately. One vote is taken on all of the items, and the officer recommendation is therefore the decision of the council. The following items have not been withdrawn for individual consideration, and they'll be dealt with via the en bloc method. Therefore, the officer recommendation will be the decision of council. And there are a few here, I'm just going to read them out. 14.3.1, LPS number 17, amendment number 231, short-term rental accommodation on page 105. 14.3.3, which is the Responsible Authority Report, proposed Life Village Park Home Park, lot 900 Chishing Road and lot 9501 Fairchild Street, and lot 9013 Tigermouth Boulevard, Bullsbrook, DA 6922024 on page 211. 14.3.5, which is the payment in lieu of parking plan in Guildford on page 260. 14.5.1, which is the financial management report for the period ending 30th of November 2024 on page 300. Item 14.5.2, which is the financial management report for the period ending 31st December 2024 on page 321. 14.5.3, list of accounts paid in November 2024 on page 342. 14.5.4, list of accounts paid December 2024, page 394. Bear with me. 14.5.5, change in basis of valuation on page 476. Item 14.5.6, which is the risk appetite statements, and they're on page 485. Item 14.5.7, council member mileage reimbursement for November to December 2023 on page 498. 16.1 is the confidential request for rent rebate Child Australia, which is the confidential agenda. And I ask, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Zanino, and a seconder? Councillor Dawn, thank you. Is there anyone against? Sorry, Councillor Ringo.
Sorry, can I please withdraw 16.1, please?
16.1.
Confidential request for rent rebate Child Australia.
Okay. Is there any other items to be withdrawn? No? Okay. So I'll just ask, the mover again was Councillor Dawn and seconder was Councillor Zanino. Thank you. And was there anyone against? No, that's carried. Thank you. So then we now move to part 14, which is reports, and that is withdrawn for debate or absolute majority vote required. So I'll start with item, and I'll just let you know that item 14.3.4, which is the proposed telecommunications infrastructure, lots 7 to 9, number 41 on James Street, Guildford, which was the development DA 458-24 on page 243. This item has been withdrawn from the agenda as the applicant has withdrawn the application from the approval process. And the following reports have been withdrawn for debate or have an absolute majority vote in accordance with the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2023 and will be dealt with by council individually. So the first one we have is 14.1.1, Policy Review, Council Member Allowances, Expenses and Recognition on page 11. Proposed motion by Councillor Bowman. If you'd like to read out your alternate motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Madam Mayor, before I start, can I ask, did you declare an interest in this one? Because I didn't hear anything and I would have thought there'd be a financial interest.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Yes, through you, presiding member. It's the administration regulation, I think it's 13.4 AD, that exempts the disclosure of any interest in relation to a vehicle. it's considered as a, I think the word used as an expense. But I can identify, if you want me to look it up. And
It's okay. It's not me that may or may not have to declare it. So, Madam Mayor, I move that Council resolves to not adopt revised policy POLC 141, Council members' allowance, expense and recognition as attached, and the reason being the revised policy has a financial impact cost to the City of Swan that is not necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. And I'll ask, do you have a seconder? Councillor Howlett? Thank you. And is there any councillor who wishes to speak against the motion? No. Then it's carried. Thank you. Then we move on to 14.1.2, new delegation 41, determination of parking bays, parking stations and parking permits, parking local law, page 24. And we'll need an absolute majority vote for this item. Proposed motion by Councillor Bowman, if you'd like to read out your alternate motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I move that Council resolves to 1, adopt new Delegation 41 entitled Determination of Parking Bays, Parking Stations and Parking Permits, Parking Local Law, as attached with the following additional council condition on this delegation, and that would be a number 3, a limit on the delegation, on delegation to the relevant exec director only, and the reason for the motion, it addresses the operational impacts as identified in the office report by ensuring improved accountability. It reduces the situation of signs being prematurely erected as recently witnessed in Ellenbrook by those without authority to do so.
Thank you. And do you have a seconder? Councillor Howlett? Is there anyone like to speak against? Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, before I start my debate, I'll ask the question first. May I ask what position authorised the signs erections without authority in Ellenbrook 2 weeks before this council made that decision?
Thank you. Yes, thanks.
Thank you, and you'd be aware, Councillor Bowman, that the Ellenbrook parking plan had been extensively briefed and discussed with the council, and in those briefings we had made council members aware of the imminent opening of the train station and the need to have preventative measures in place. You'd also note that when poles are erected, no signage was publicly displayed. There was no signage restriction in the area applicable at the time until council had made its decision. Once council had made its decision, the authority to remove any said restrictions was then in place.
So, Madam Mayor, my question was who authorised the erection of the signs?
Through you, CEO.
Ultimately, I can't tell you, but ultimately all matters come through the CEO, so the issue of installation of infrastructure is ultimately my responsibility.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, staff in their report have said we've got some operational issues. Otherwise, we can't erect signs without doing it without authority, unless it comes to council. When we delegate to the CEO without restrictions, the CEO is within his right or her right to on-delegate to any staff member in the organisation. Madam Mayor, I don't think that's a responsibility that we should be allowing to occur on this one. And the reason why, Madam Mayor, even in the response that the CEO just provided about who gave the authority to erect those signs in Ellenbrook, he indicated it was the CEO. So why is there a need to on-delegate lower than the exec manager? I'll disagree with the CEO that they were actually signs that told people they couldn't park there. I remember making in the debate that at least the state government was able to Christmas wrap their new signs for the bus stops, but unfortunately we weren't able to, and it was quickly rectified. But Madam Mayor, in my opinion, those signs should never have been installed. Staff did not have the delegation to do so. And all I'm asking for and all I'm suggesting is, and it's not going to be the relevant exec manager or CEO that goes out and looks at all of them, but their signature is going to go on the bottom of a request from a staff member that says yes or no. But then at least as this council, when we get complaints, and we do get complaints, we know which exec manager we can go to who approved that. That's all I'm asking. This is not going to bog down the operational requirements, because remembering, without this delegation, every time staff have to come to council, I'm not suggesting that. All I'm saying is let's put a restriction on this delegation,
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'll ask Councillor Howlett as the seconder. Do you wish to speak?
No, nothing further to add.
Thank you. And I'll ask, is anyone against? You to speak.
Thank you. I don't support the delegation of any authority over parking away from council. Parking is an incredibly important issue for residents and ratepayers of the City of Swan, because it's largely a very car-dependent local authority, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better real soon, because we continue to build more roads and build in areas where there's no public transport or very little public transport. So we're likely to get greater pressure on parking resources. And the thing about it is the complaints come straight to councillors. Councillors get these complaints and actually don't know what's going on. And there's been quite a bit of this lately. People have asked me questions about various things that I actually have no idea about, because it's all been put in the operational basket. So I think council needs to continue its oversight on parking issues. And the final thing is, if we're going to delegate all of our powers, including ones that are very important to our ratepayers, I ask, what is there left for council to actually do? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. I'll ask, does anyone like to speak for the motion? Does anyone like to speak against the motion? Does anyone else? I'll ask for your right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, it's hard to rebut Councillor Catalano. We agree with most of the comments she makes. But in moving this alternative motion, I did a balance and did a conservative approach. We've been told time and time again, we don't want to be dealing with little operational items that come to this council. However, I agree with Councillor Catalano that a lot of complaints are about parking. I've still got a sore ear hearing about all the issues in Ellenbrook from the parking, and with the train station and parking everywhere, which has been cascaded. We know these issues as councillors because we hear about them. This allows the officers to not have to bring it to council, but it restricts it being on-delegated to anyone else but the exec manager. It's a good conservative approach.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'll now put that to the vote. Those in favour? So I had Councillor Oringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Prodovnik, Deputy Mayor and myself, and those against. Councillor Catalano, Councillor Dawn, and Councillor Howlett. The motion is carried. 11-3. Thank you. And we move to item 14.1.3, which is the repeal of compliance policy and adoption of governance framework, page 28. Proposed motion by Councillor Bowman. If you'd like to read out your alternate motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I move the Council resolves to repeal policy POLC 162 compliance, and 2, not adopt the governance framework. And the reason for the motion, governance frameworks are not required, provide no benefits to the residents and ratepayers, as it simply regurgitates information covered in legislation or other documentation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howlett? I'll ask, is there anyone against? Would you like to speak? Thanks, Councillor Bowman.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I won't talk about the repeal of policy C162 because I'm pretty sure that the Deputy Mayor in his alternative agrees with that too. But when we look at the governance framework, As a bit of a governance nut, I like nothing more than looking at legislation, looking at well-written documents, and I'd say it's a well-written document. But, Madam Mayor, I learnt nothing extra from this. It was a regurgitation of legislation. It was a regurgitation of other policies. And I question why we did it. It's got a nice, colourful front page. It's got nice information. But when I look at the officer's comment, and this cemented it for me, we should be doing it because companies such as Woodside, Wesfarmers, Rio Tinto and Synergy all have governance charters. Governance charters, not frameworks, but let's not play on words. We're not a multinational company. Now, I believe we have shareholders. Our shareholders are our ratepayers and we should be giving them the best return. But we're not here to make money. When I look then at the two examples, and I'll try not to laugh, at the two examples of local governments that have got similar governance frameworks, Coburn's and Stirling's, it does not give me a good hope and that warm fuzzy feeling that a governance framework will fix everything. City of Coburn had some governance issues since 2016. Stirling had some governance issues. Obviously, a good, well-written governance framework did not help those two local governments. So putting all the legislation, putting a few of our own personal views on that legislation and our interpretation, I think is dangerous. But it shows me, especially with those two examples, because I'm not going to the private world, it does not provide any benefits. Well, it didn't provide a benefit for Coburn and Stirling. And perhaps I should declare an interest that after I left Stirling, it was shortly after they adopted a governance framework. Read into that what you'd like. But Madam Mayor, I look at this and I'm looking again, and I don't see anything that I don't read in the Act. Actually, it actually quotes the Act and then states it. So if the legislation changes, and this is the worst thing we all get told in local government, in policies, you never quote legislation in a policy because if the legislation changes, your policy's outdated. The governance framework. We do a ward boundary review. Well, the map's out. If we change the number of councillors, the map's out. I'm not sure if we're going to change our vision.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. That's your 3 minutes. I'll ask Councillor Howlett, would you like to speak to the motion?
And nothing further, thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'll ask, is anyone against? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I do actually agree with a lot of what Councillor Bowman says, and when I first looked at this item, I was of the view that I was going to move a similar motion. I read the document through and asked myself, what is the purpose of this? What is it for? So I looked at it again, and then I actually read the report, and it gives the framework aims to, and it provides a number of reasons, some of which I think are good, but some I don't quite understand. But the one at the bottom that really made me think was it said, provide a reference tool for employee inductions and other stakeholders. And I thought, well, those other stakeholders would be potentially include new councillors. And I went back and I thought, well, okay, this document doesn't provide me now as a 9-year councillor with any new information. But it would have been extraordinarily useful to me as a newly elected councillor. I would have found it absolutely invaluable. And what would make it even more useful would be if it contained footnotes to the relevant legislation, so I could go off and look for it. So I took the view that, well, we've probably spent quite a lot of staff time and money on writing this, and it probably isn't a good idea to just ditch it or throw it in the bin. My view is that we should adopt it as a document. In my view, it acts more as a sort of training guide or quick reference guide, so I think it's potentially quite useful. So I can see Councillor Bowman's point of view. It doesn't help Councillor Bowman with his expert knowledge. It perhaps doesn't help me that much, but I think it could be useful for other people. So having spent all the time and money on it, I just don't think we should throw it out, and that's why I've got an alternate motion of my own, which basically says to adopt it subject to adding in footnotes to the relevant legislation and to add a section about redress, how to go about complaining about things. So for that reason, I'm opposed to this, although I do share a lot of Councillor Bowman's views. So I urge you to vote against this so that we can retain the document, make some improvements to it, and it may be a benefit for new employees and new councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll ask, is there any councillor who'd like to speak for the motion? Any councillor who'd like to speak against the motion? No? Councillor Bowman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And again, hard to rebut comments from Councillor Johnson when he agreed with most of mine. I also wonder what's the purpose. Councillor Johnson talked about the induction. Yes, when I got inducted as a councillor here, it wasn't to my level of satisfaction. But I know that the induction now that gets done by the new councillors, and I'm looking at one of my ward councillors, is extremely great. If we're talking about staff training, a governance framework is not going to do that. Councillor Johnson talked about, well, perhaps we shouldn't throw it out because staff have spent a lot of time and money and all that. Well, the fact that we spend a lot of time and money on things, we spend a lot of time and money trying to do traffic calming on Brookmount in Ellenbrook, but it hasn't worked. So we're going to have to do something there. We can't just throw things out. I'm concerned, and I read this. I read it, and in a couple of weeks, I expect it will be out of date because the legislation in local government is changing so much that even someone that likes to read it is battling to keep up at the moment with all the changes. And because you have a document that 80% of it is really regurgitating legislation, I'm concerned with that. Is it going to keep coming to us every 3 months? But councillors, what's the benefit? This is all included. If there's anything in here that you don't know about or aren't sure where to go to, let me know and I'll point you to the right legislation, the right document that we already got. Why double up?
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I now put that to the vote. Those in favour? So we had Councillor Catalano, Councillor Dawn, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Brodovnik, and we had, that's it, and those against is Deputy Mayor and myself. I think it was only 2. So it's 12-2, it's carried. Thank you. And now we move on to item 14.2.1, social strategy approval on page 73. And this item has been withdrawn for debate by Councillor Catalano, and I will need a mover of the officer's recommendation. And that is that. Councillor McCulloch, thank you. On page 73. Okay. And need a seconder. Councillor Zanino. I'll ask, is there anyone against? Do you wish to debate it? Thank you, Councillor Catalano. Okay. So, Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, we know that this proposed social strategy has been prepared to achieve the social key result area of our strategic community plan, a very high level and important document that we refer to in many of our aspects across the city. This is to be the city's first social strategy. I think reading through the report and the comments from officers, looking at the background to it and looking at our strategic community plan objectives, the relevant focus areas and how they speak to and address those objectives is pertinent. Having a look at the consultation where industry stakeholders through Swan Engage, face-to-face meetings, phone calls and emails were consulted. It was a really good number of people that accessed the Swan Engage page, and we also had some written responses. We had a council briefing. and I would have thought if there were any major issues, they would have been addressed then and there. And we approved that draft social strategy to be advertised for public comment. It's all there, councillors. I've read through it. I'm sure you have too. I'm sure you've understood why we're here and where we're at with things. And I encourage you to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. Councillor Zanino is the seconder.
Madam Mayor, I have nothing further to add. Councillor McCulloch has quite adequately dealt with it.
Thank you. I'll ask, does anyone like to speak against? Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. Yes, this social strategy does refer to the strategic community plan, and it is a high level and important document, but unfortunately it's badly out of date. And the predominant problem with the strategic community plan is that it does not sufficiently recognise the huge population that is in Ellenbrook and the surrounding suburbs, which is already twice the size of Midland and is expected to further quadruple. It doesn't recognise Ellenbrook as a strategic centre, and I think that it's premature to start putting in place social strategies for the city when you haven't got your fundamentals correct, because the outcomes and the decisions and the goals of that strategy are likely to be hugely different once we get the priorities and the principles of the strategic community plan updated to reflect the facts about the City of Swan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll ask if there's anyone like to speak for the motion. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Madam Mayor, I'm going to agree with Councillor Catalano again tonight. We both agree that Ellenbrook is the centre of the City of Swan, and that's the way you should be looking at it. But Madam Mayor, outdated, I was just looking at that, and I know we are in 2025, but it is 2024 on the thing there. But Madam Mayor, strategies. Strategies is us as council telling the staff the direction that we want to see them take. When we get further items come to us, it should be based around this strategy. But a strategy, unlike the last document, tells me things. It doesn't regurgitate legislation. It doesn't regurgitate where I can find some other things. But what it tells me is this is our approach to social services and forms further decision making. This strategy is not going to be the same strategy in 4 years' time, because things do change. This strategy, lots of lovely pictures, make it a lot easier to read, is a project that keeps evolving. It keeps evolving. I think it's a good start. Do I like everything in it? No. It would never going to make me happy. But what it is a really good start from the staff to say, this is how we're going to deliver our services. This is what we're looking at. So councillors, I support the officer's recommendation, but I do note that there are some things that will change, and I do agree with Councillor Catalano that Ellenbrook is the centre of the City of Swan.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'll ask, does anyone like to speak for the motion? Against the motion? Anyone for the motion? If there's no one else who'd like to speak, then I'll ask for your right to reply, Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I think we do recognise the huge population in Ellenbrook, and this strategy encompasses that, and it considers that, and it does speak to that. I think there are some facts, and they're important ones, and the facts are that Midland is the City of Swan's strategic metropolitan centre. Ellenbrook is unique. It is a growing community, and there are some pertinent aspects of that growth that we will take into account in 2, 5, 10 and 20 years, and the growth further north towards Bullsbrook and the growth therein. Ellenbrook might be the centre geographically, but that's it at the moment. This speaks to what we're looking at here with this strategy. Yes, the City of Swan is rapidly changing. Our population is growing, and at times it appears to be, and beg your pardon, a bit like a frog in a blender. But there are great things that will come out of that, and we need to stay focused on what we need to stay focused on, and I encourage you to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch, and now we'll take a vote. Those in favour? So we had Councillor Dawn, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Brodovnik, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Howlett and myself. And those against, Councillor Catalano. That's carried, 13-1, thank you. And now we move on to 14.3.2, which is the amendment number 1 to the Bullsbrook Townsite District Structure Plan, 21 properties in the proposed Bullsbrook North Urban Expansion Area, which is DSP 171A on page 145. And the proposed motion, Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. That Council resolve to 1. Recommend and notify to the Western Australian Planning Commission that proposed amendment number 1 to the Bullsbrook Townsite District Structure Plan not be approved. 2. Notify the applicant and submitters of the Council resolution. Reason for the motion: the amendment further contributes to urban sprawl in the Perth metropolitan area, destroying the natural environment and agricultural land of the Bullsbrook area. The amendment proposes 15,000 residents and their cars with no plans for train public transport. There should be public transport there. Train public transport for Bullsbrook's population, which is estimated to increase by 1,000% from 7,000 to 85,000 people. Department of Water, which is DUR, does not support the amendment because there's no water management plan and raises doubts about availability of water for public open spaces. And I've got another reason actually, and that is the complete destruction of critically endangered, threatened ecological community, and its capital, Floristic, F-L-O-R-E-S-T-I-C, Floristic, community type 3C. And if you just put proposes at the beginning, proposes. Thanks very much.
Can I just clarify that? Was it 3C, did you say?
Sorry, threatened floristic community type 3C.
So numero 3?
Number 3C.
Thank you.
Capital C. Yes, thank you. And floristic community type is in capitals. You know, like that the beginning of it's a label name. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dawn.
I'll foreshadow the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Now I'll ask, is anyone against? Councillor Bowman? Do you wish to debate it? Thank you. Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. Fortunately for you and for me, I won't have to make many more speeches condemning urban sprawl. Why? Because approval of amendments like this to the Bullsbrook Structure Plan for rezoning of 364 hectares of rural farmland to urban hot, treeless tarmac sheds and rows of houses, plus an industrial area for an almost 1,000% increase in Bullsbrook's population will ultimately leave the whole of the City of Swan covered in urban sprawl. No doubt in future, the same housing pressure arguments put forward today will be used to support urban and industrial development in Gidgigana and the Swan Valley, because it appears no one is prepared to say no to this madness. That's why it's important for me to speak up and say no, to show that there is opposition to another housing estate right next door to the federal airstrip, aviation airstrip, with 15,000 new residents and their cars on the fringes of the Perth metro area. Opposition to the wasteful loss of natural environment, native bush, birds and animals, and loss of agricultural land and degradation of soil and water. Complete destruction of Wandoo and Marri, critically endangered floristic community type 3C, threatened ecological community, of which there are only a few left. Once they're gone forever. People want diversity and they want tree protection. Both DBCA and DUA don't support the amendment because it lacks a water strategy, and DUA have raised doubts that extraction licences will be available to keep public open spaces green. It's no secret Perth has already literally run out of water. The nature clearing and the same old tired 1950s suburban house and package sprawl model continues because of an insatiable, ravenous appetite for easy profits now, even though there is plenty of evidence that it will, in the future, result in huge, maybe insurmountable costs. Curtin University Sustainability Policy Institute estimated every new dwelling on the urban fringe now costs $90,000 in taxpayer subsidies compared to similar infill dwelling. The policies and the business usual approach of land and house packages have not and will not work to alleviate a housing crisis.
Councillor Catalano, that's your 2 minutes. 3 minutes, and I'll ask now, does anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Bowman? Sorry, the seconder was Councillor Dawn. My apologies. Would you like to speak to the motion? No. Thank you. Councillor Bowman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Madam Mayor, following on from the last item where we've realised that Ellenbrook is the centre of the City of Swan, Bullsbrook's just up the road. Now, Madam Mayor, things have changed. I grew up in the Swan Valley, 1975. Yes, I'm 50 this year. Madam Mayor, I remember when Beachborough didn't exist. I remember Ellenbrook was a sandpit that I may or may not have gone down in a cardboard box. Madam Mayor, I do not know about this 1950 sprawls because I'm not that old, so I'm looking at Councillor Henderson there. But I do not understand that we actually are buying quarter-acre blocks now. That dream of the 1950s is gone. Madam Mayor, we're talking 300 square metres if we're lucky. But let's look at the reasons. Now, and I'll finish my debate with one question, so I'm just getting in there. The majority of the area has been cleared. It's been modified. And historical pasture use, it's completely degraded, except for one part, which I'll ask that question. But Madam Mayor, should we be knocking back something because there's no train? Well, hate to tell you, but it was, what, 1995, Councillor Henderson, when Ellenbrook started? And the trains just come now? So do you build it and they will come, or otherwise? Look, I think it'd be fantastic. And I actually asked the question, when's the North Ellenbrook train station going? It'll eventually come. But councillors, we have a major problem in this country, in WA, with a land availability. We have a reluctance to go up. I'm happy. And I tried it with the Brabham structure plan to get high density near the Whiteman train station or wherever it was, because that's where we should be doing it. But here's an opportunity to provide more housing for the residents. I hear about the homelessness. Now, this is not homelessness because people can't actually afford a house. This is homelessness because people can't actually even get into a house. With 4 kids, I hope they go on their way soon. But councillors, we can't stop urban sprawl. If you look at it, the amendment contributes to the urban sprawl in the Perth metropolitan area. It's not a country area, it's the metropolitan area. I remember Bullsbrook. Gee, it used to be a packed lunch to get out in Bullsbrook when I went to primary school and that as well. But things have changed. It provides an option for people to buy land. It is a good option. And I'm going to finish with my one question, right on the 3 seconds. So,
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowman. That's your time.
So yes, I indicated I had a question.
That's
Yes, so my debate.
3 minutes.
We didn't pull me up for it. I asked for an
We're
extra
going by the
minute.
time, so that's 3 minutes.
I
So
asked
I'll
for
ask,
a minute.
are there any other councillors who'd like to speak?
I'll ask for an
for the
extra minute,
motion.
please.
Would you like to extend for a minute? Seconder? Thank you. Deputy Mayor, is anyone against? Councillor Bowman? You're against? Councillor Catalano?
Yeah, I am.
Thank you. Okay. Now I'd like to vote those in favour of 1 minute extension. We have Councillor Aringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Prodovnik, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Hallett. And those against, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Dawn, Councillor Knight and myself. So that's carried. 1 minute extension.
So my apologies, councillors. Should have asked the question to start with and I would have had my 3 minutes. But I knew my mistake. So the report notes the presence of one small area of intact native vegetation on lot 802 Morrissey Road that contains all that. We see that paragraph, page 154. I'm mindful of only 46 seconds left to ask my question, so I won't read it all out, but councillors, staff have looked at that. Can you tell me, will that be protected?
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowman. Now I'll ask again if anyone would like to speak.
Point of order,
Sorry,
Madam
this
Mayor.
question, would you like to, do you, Mr. no, Mr. Russell?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, the question was, would what be protected?
You could repeat your question, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And now without the minute, I can probably read the whole thing out. On page 154, the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph, the officer's report says, and I quote, the report notes the presence of one small area of intact native vegetation on lot 802 Morrissey Road that contains 3 plants of the chittering grass, wattle, acacia and nomala, which is listed as endangered under the Biodiversity Conservation Act and the Commonwealth Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. Goes a little bit more. So the report has said there's one little area, it's right up near one of the streets, Morrissey Road. Will that get protected?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the repeat of that question. In short, the protection of any listed endangered species under the EPBC Act will be determined by the Commonwealth Agency. So, and that would be the point in which subsequently an application is made by the proponents. If this structure plan or if this proposal advances, when they make an application to that agency, that will be part of the evaluation. So they'll determine whether that stays, goes, is offset, or whichever.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Now I'd like to ask if there are any councillors who'd like to speak for the motion. Councillor Ringo?
Yes, thank you. For the motion.
That's the motion up on the floor.
For the motion.
Yes.
Like to speak for the motion?
Sorry, against the motion.
I was
Sorry.
asking for. Is there any councillors who'd like to speak for the motion? Is there any councillor who'd like to speak against the motion?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, we've heard a lot tonight, everyone going through the reports, but I would just like to bring attention back to the community's perspective in this, which is quite important. So we've had meetings and I've had quite a good chance of chats with a couple of Bullsbrook residents, and my fellow ward councillors would also know that we've been in contact with the Bullsbrook Resident and Ratepayers Association. And from what we gather and from what we got from them is that there is actually no obvious concern that is flickering red light, in my words, that the community is so concerned about when it comes to this particular proposal. So my point is, let's listen to the community. There seems to be not to be a major concern. And look, the proposal has gone through a lot. It's gone through, and most of the concerns that were raised tonight, if you read the report, it's in there, it's been rectified. I think this is a good start. So let's not support this motion, and let's support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ringo. I'll ask, does anyone like to speak for the motion? There's no one for. Does anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you. Councillors, the officer's recommendation speaks to the concerns, the potential issues that different departments had with this. They've been reconciled right through, and that recommendation contained in the report is to approve the proposed amendment number 1 to the Bullsbrook Townsite DSP, and you will see that within the points 1, 2 and 3, it clearly notes what needs to happen to ensure a comprehensive outcome. Councillors, as you would know, we have employment nodes across the city and more to come. We need housing to accommodate residents so that they can live, work and play in the City of Swan. This is absolutely essential for our residents. And it also minimises, and I won't go into the whole flow chart of how that happens, but you can happily speak to me about it. This will minimise rate rises into the future. And that is something that we all need to do our homework on. Councillor Catalano has mentioned about urban sprawl. Yes, it disturbs me greatly. But there was one thing that was said in a debate, Councillor Catalano, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago. And you said, if you want to reduce your footprint, you have to go up. I was hoping that to be the case with the city's most excellent Midland Oval redevelopment plan, that is New Junction. And it is something that we need to consider and need to keep championing. There is land set aside for a train to Bullsbrook. Do your homework, it's there. It's future-proofed. All of these things need to be considered. Perth has an expanding population. It disheartens me, but we have growing population, growing rates of immigration, job requirements. Where do we go? Where do we grow? What do we do? What land do we use? I kind of sound like Dr. Seuss. Anyway, it's all of those things that need to be considered, and we need to support the officer's recommendation, get this going, and always have in the back of our mind our land usage, our environment, our sustainability, and look forward as to how we manage that wisely as well. Thank you.
Councillor McCulloch, do you wish to foreshadow the officer's recommendation? You did at the beginning?
We're not clear.
Thank you very much. Now I'll ask again, councillors, does anyone like to speak against the motion? To be clear, against? This is the last call. Was there anyone who'd like to speak for the motion? If not, Councillor Catalano, your right of reply.
The report is actually inaccurate. It doesn't actually identify a really large area of bushland that goes east to west, and that's just not on that map. So if you're relying on the report, you're going to be mistaken. There's a hell of a lot of TSC there that's going to go. You just need to go out there and see it with your own eyes. You can do that from the road, and that's exactly what I've done. So the majority of land might be cleared, but the most important aspects are that the bit of bush that's left standing is critically endangered. So just getting on to infill. Look, if you're going to have infill, do you know what you've got to have? You've got to have parks. You've got to have a really nice area for people to want to go and live in. And I'm afraid That doesn't seem to have happened in Midland because we don't have, like the community wanted, a Central Park. And so the whole thing is not attractive and won't be attractive unless there's some green open space. And they also wanted to retain heritage, which is another draw card for inner city living. As we all know, no surprises there. So getting back to my speech, the policies and business usual approach of land and house packages haven't and will not work to alleviate a housing crisis. If so, please explain how after more than 50 years of clearing for greenfield urban sprawl, we still have a crisis of housing availability and affordability. The business usual approach to housing policy failure is extremely risky. And it's not just me saying it, by the way. The Property Council of Australia warned in 2018 that Perth could not afford to keep expanding. To do so is to burden future generations with a less sustainable, less efficient and less livable city. So, I don't know where you're getting your confidence from tonight to say that this is the way to go forward. A 2024 WA Today article warned that treeless estates on Perth's urban fringe are vulnerable to abandonment
Point of order.
in future.
Councillor Catalano, if you could just resume your seat, please. Councillor Bowman, point of order.
Eight
Quote
point-
the time, page. Thanks.
8.10 subsection 4. I've let it go long enough, but it keeps introducing new information that no one has brought up previously.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I rule that you have the point of order. Councillor Catalano, if you could just continue, please, and resume what has already been spoken about.
These estates are likely to be abandoned in future to become ghost suburbs inhospitable because of climate change and water scarcity. Deriding attempts to say no to this amendment tonight further impedes the development of progressive solutions for other better and more attractive infill housing and urban development. Cheap sprawl results in a downward spiral as it impedes development of an attractive vision for infill development. The results are clear. Perth is dismally failing to meet its target of 47% infill because of urban sprawl. Therefore, we need to say no tonight. That is what we're here for.
you,
We can't
Councillor
say that we're
Catalano,
not
and that's your 3
capable.
minutes.
Actually, I'd like to have another minute, please.
I'll second it.
Ask for a seconder, Councillor Dawn. Is anyone against? You wish to debate it? No? Those in favour? Councillor Catalano, Councillor Dawn, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Podovnik, and Deputy Mayor Councillor Hallett and myself. And those against? Councillor Henderson. Carried on 1 minute extension.
Thank you. That's what our job is here tonight. We're here to make decisions about whether to continue with this urban sprawl that is such a blight on our environment and actually impedes the development of progressive infill solutions. We need to say no to this amendment tonight to get that process happening, to make one small step away from a tired old model that has failed us. It's time to stop the sprawl and insist on better designed urban areas and homes for future residents that also protects the natural environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. I'll ask those in favour. Councillor Catalano, Councillor Dawn, Councillor Knight, and Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Hallett, and those against. Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Podovnik, and myself. So it's lost 5, 9, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 8. Thank you. This is recommendation.
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor McCulloch. Yep. And what was the amendment?
To put a point 4 on the end, and the amendment is to ask the state government to investigate funding the train line from Ellenbrook to Bullsbrook.
As the mover, happy to include that.
Acceptable, thank you. And the seconder? Thank you. Okay. Councillor Bowman, do you wish to speak to that? Sorry? Oh, anyone else like to debate it? Councillor Catalano? Thank you. Councillor Bowman?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And Madam Mayor, we'll tag team with my other Pearce Ward councillors because I know they've all got things to say. Madam Mayor, degraded land. There's one area that would be good to make sure it gets protected, and I know some of the landowners are here and they've probably listened to that. There's a little parcel of land. But Madam Mayor, I've got 4 teenage kids. They're going to need somewhere to live. If we're not going up, we're going out. Madam Mayor, I'd be happy that if we can do what we've done in some other developments in Bullsbrook, where we have, not we, but where the developers and the community have really improved the natural waterways. There's some great work there, some great examples, and that's obviously further down the track. But Madam Mayor, I said it all before, against the previous motion, so I'll listen to the debate and rebut anything in closing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor McCulloch is the seconder.
There's probably nothing further to really say, except if you have read the report and read it thoroughly, and the officer's recommendation does speak to all of those aspects of the report, so it makes complete sense. And councillors, the City of Swan is unique. We have growth areas that will continue for decades to come. How we approach that is significant, but the reality is, and I have this discussion with so many people in Australia, being such a huge nation with still such a low population, we will continue to keep growing. Infill desperately is required across many areas of the Perth metropolitan area and in probably some of our larger towns and smaller cities. And at no stage are we going to halt immigration or put limits on our birth rate to not grow. It isn't going to happen. And so we need to be addressing these issues. We need to be accommodating the growth and doing it wisely and looking into the future as how we incorporate sustainability and environment as well and make sure that we get it right.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. I'll ask any councillors who wish to speak against the motion. Councillor Catalano?
Yes, okay, thank you. If growing means sprawling urban development from Cervantes to Augusta, we really have to think about our future here in the southwest. And it looks like that's the way it's going, unless we contain it. And we have to contain it now because it's already got out of hand.
Point of order.
Councillor Catalano, if you could resume your seat, please.
And my apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman,
My
what is your
apologies
point of
for
order?
being delayed. 7.21C, relevance. We're talking about Bullsbrook. Last I knew, Augusta was probably 4 or 5 hours away and not in the metro area.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Uphold that. Councillor Catalano, if you could keep it relevant to...
Just a year ago, in 2023, WA Today quoted Limnios, Property Group Managing Director, and in quote, he said, "Unless we act quickly to contain urban sprawl, future generations will call our civic leaders and business leaders of today the greedy generation that had zero consideration for the environment, financial waste created financial waste through unneeded freeway expansions and infrastructure costs just to satisfy development that doesn't make sense." That's a quote. It's not just me saying it. So it means coming up with strategies that will cope with changing circumstances What is proposed here tonight is not new. It's the same outdated and destructive model that got us into the climate and environmental crisis that we face now in the first place. That have actually and will continue to leave communities on the peri-urban fringe without infrastructure, reliant on motor vehicles and substandard services. Pete Chief Executive Brendan Gore, in another article, conceded Perth's housing patterns were the reverse of what they should be, with big blocks close to the CBD and smaller blocks the further you travelled outward, but said developers were just responding to government and market needs. Resilience to change does not mean continuing to act in the same way that brought about the threat in the first place. Governments, even this local government, have a role to play in rejecting sprawl and getting the recipe for sustainable housing solutions right. If Perth stays on its current path, it risks, and this is a quote by the way, it risks intensifying all existing problems related to commuting, the environment and social cohesion, unquote. And while other cities globally are innovating, Perth, and we can include Bullsbrook in that because now that is the peri-urban fringes of Perth. Perth risks falling behind, burdening future generations with a less sustainable, less efficient and less livable city.
Thank you.
Young people, please take note.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. Does anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very aware of how many families are living in cars as they can't find accommodation, as I think it was Councillor Bowman said. Not that they can't afford accommodation. We don't have any control over how many immigrants come into the country, and I'm one of them. We don't have enough housing stock to accommodate people now. We can do something about allowing land to be developed to accommodate people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. And councillors ask again, does anyone like to speak against the motion? Does anyone like to speak for the motion? If not, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Madam Mayor, I'm going to talk about all of WA because in rebutting Councillor Catalano's comments, it allows me to. But councillors, it would seem to me, and what I heard, the applicant is to blame for all the problems in the metro area. Well, we're not dealing with that. The substandard services. Well, I don't even know what services they're going to put there yet, so I can't comment on the substandard services. Are you going to do gravel roads? Because that's probably country. So that would be a substandard services. State governments, previous property developers, they're to blame. I heard about solutions. Well, I don't hear too many solutions around this table. Fonzie Flats, Todd's, transit-oriented developments. Multi-generational houses, they're solutions, but that's not what we're dealing with in this item. This is about land. It's not about the built structure. Councillors, as I raised in my problematic question, which I apologise again for not asking first, in the report there's one area of land that I'm looking at the owners and saying, please see what you can do there. But I see no issue with this one because if we don't look at other solutions, and we can take the lead on that, going up. Multi-generational housing, just not in my family. But councillors, this is the result. Should we be looking at Todd's on all those new train stations? I'm pretty sure we raised that and that didn't actually get a Guernsey. There is solutions, but that's another day. And yes, we can't keep kicking that can down the road, but this is not the applicant's fault. It's a metro area. It's not 40 years ago where I would have had a packed lunch to get there. News alert, Woolies is getting built in Bullsbrook as well now. So, councillors, I support the recommendation. I think the additional cheeky little ad from Councillor Jones to look at some funding for building the train line. If we start now, we might get that in 10 years' time. Totally support it and ask councillors to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'll now put that to the vote. Those in favour? So Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Prodovnik, and myself. There's 8. And those against? Councillor Catalano, Councillor Dawn, and Councillor Knight, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Howlett. So the motion is carried. 8-5. Thank you, everyone. For those in the gallery that are following along, we are moving to 14.4.1, which is the Club Night Light Program 2025 small grant application on page 276. Proposed motion by Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I move the council resolves to endorse the city to apply for the Club Lights programs grants for lighting upgrades at the following sites: the Dulcie Lilio netball courts, and B, North Swan Park baseball field, and 2, advise the Department of Local Government, Sports and Cultural Industries that the city ranking of the application is as follows: A, the Dulcie Lilio netball courts, and B, the North Swan Park baseball field. And the reason for the alternative is there's a far greater number of users of the Dulcie Lilio netball courts, and ranking should be based on the maximum benefits to residents and ratepayers.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Do you have a seconder? 2 hands. Councillor Zanino, thank you as a seconder. And is there anyone like to debate? Sorry, anyone against? Question.
I've got a question. I've got a question about the facts that where are the facts that one sporting facility is more used than another sporting facility. I don't see it in the report. It may be there, but I can't see it.
Mr. Coaten?
Yes, and apologies that information wasn't in the report, but the information provided by Councillor Bowman is correct. There are a considerably greater number of members at the Netball Club.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coaten. I'll go back to asking, is anyone against? There's no one against. That's carried. Thank you. All right, we move to 14.4.2, which is to request the Minister for Lands to acquire private right-of-way on Lot 66 Junction Parade Midland on page 280. This item is withdrawn for debate by Councillor Catalano. And I need a mover of the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Bowman. And the seconder was Councillor McCulloch. And is anyone against? Councillor Catalano, do you wish to debate it? Thank you. Councillor Bowman's ready. Councillor Bowman? Don't wish to speak? Okay. Councillor McCulloch is the seconder? No. Councillor Catalano?
Yes, thank you. I read the submissions made by the adjacent landowners, and you know, the facts weren't clear to me as to why this land has to be acquired by the Minister, and why we're requesting the Minister to acquire the land. I don't know why that is, and they don't know either. There's no reasons given as to why this right-of-way that all of the adjacent properties around it have a right to use, why this right-of-way has to be basically dedicated as a public road. They have a private interest over the right-of-way, and I would support that, especially as there's no good reason as to why things have to change now. There's also an argument that without that right-of-way for those adjacent properties, that they are actually devalued, and there's a good argument with that, I think. because obviously a right-of-way is quite valuable, especially if you've got a small lot with no crossover at the front, which in fact 3 of those properties do have. That is why the right-of-way exists. So they've got no crossover street frontage for traffic to go in. They've got a right-of-way. That means they have use of the right-of-way. It's a private interest, and that is going to be subsumed in this public road. That doesn't necessarily give them any rights at all, especially to over what is done with that road and what isn't done with that road in the future. So council have also declined to purchase some of the affected lots adjacent to that right-of-way. There's a complaint about that in the submissions, and you know, they're not happy about that either, because they wanted to be able to divest that to the council with that right over that right-of-way. So yeah, I just think that this is riding roughshod basically over residents and ratepayers and owners, and I hear a lot of arguments on this council about how important that is to councillors.
Thank you. That's your 3 minutes. I'll ask if anyone would like to speak for the motion.
Question.
Question.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to, I believe, Mr Van der Linde. I'd like to know how this right-of-way, when it is acquired, will be aligned with the intent of the Midland Oval Redevelopment Master Plan.
Mr Van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, the Midland Activity Centre, or the Midland Master Plan, does not show this right-of-way as a road. It doesn't identify it as a road itself. Within the design guidelines for the Midland centre, at the point where this road basically intersects with Neil Junction Parade, at that point there's an access point shown in the design guidelines. So from a planning perspective, it's been designed for that development lot to have access at that point, but it doesn't go into the detail to facilitate the whole access easement as a road. However, what is happening now, there are 2 lots that's still in private ownership. So by making that a formal road, gives maintenance and management of that over to the city. So that will then be able to facilitate access to those lots, which are, if you look on page 284, lot 4 and 5 on Keene Street. So it secures their access as a managed road by the city. But having said that, it needs to be noted that this easement, or then the road, is only 3.6 meters wide. So in an ultimate scenario where this area develops, if it's used as a road, it will have to be widened, and so that will be dealt with through further processes of subdivision and creation of roads, for which no planning has been done at this stage.
Further question?
Yeah, further question. So this is just one step in a process of subdivision of this area. So this isn't the ultimate end game. Is that correct?
It is correct that this is a first step, but what this first step does, it basically, the only thing that changes is it makes this council responsible for the maintenance of the road.
Thank you. So I'll ask again, councillors, does anyone like to speak for the motion? Does anyone like to speak against the motion? No?
I'll speak for it.
I'd already called for and I'd already called against, is that correct?
I'll put mine up to speak for it.
I already asked for and then I asked against. So I'd already moved forward.
Against.
Yeah.
It's against.
Well, I'll put mine up to speak for.
No, it's against. And I'll ask for your right to reply.
Madam Mayor, I've already indicated I wish to speak.
I'd already asked, is anyone like to speak for? I was very slow. I was very clear.
Because
And
the
then I
normal
asked-
process, you then say for and against. At that point, I put my hand
I
up.
made
So
it
I'd
very
like to
clear.
speak.
I was at for and against, thank you. So I'm going to ask for your right of reply, thanks.
Well, Madam Mayor, I need to dissent from your ruling there because it's reasonable for me to speak on this matter. I'm a Midland Guildford
Deputy
Ward
Mayor,
councillor.
I was very clear.
No, you weren't, Madam
Yes,
Mayor.
I was. I'm
Look,
sure
I'm
that-
going to speak anyway
No,
because
Deputy
I
Mayor.
think it's unreasonable.
Deputy Mayor, I will not allow
look,
you to
councillors,
speak.
councillors,
Deputy Mayor,
I am going to vote
point of
for
order.
this.
I'm going to ask you to cease
because
speaking now.
it is a
Through the
useful
CEO,
thing.
Mr. CEO, I'd ask for a ruling, please. I was very clear about asking if there was
It's-
anyone for and if there was anyone against.
Well, while you do that, I'll just give you a
Thank
speech.
you.
This is a very useful thing for us to do, councillors,
Through you,
because
just a moment.
it has
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
explained the process of how we
Deputy Mayor,
take
if you
a
could
piece
just
of
cease
land
speaking for a minute, please.
that is a
Deputy Mayor.
deceased right of way.
Deputy Mayor, I'm going to ask that you leave the chamber because I am in the middle of asking for some advice and I've asked you to cease speaking for a moment. I just asked you to just wait, please.
Madam Mayor, I must object to this.
Excuse me, Deputy Mayor.
I do think
I've
you're being
asked you to
disrespectful.
cease speaking. I've asked that I will ask you to leave the chamber.
I'm not going to leave
I'm
the chamber.
asking for some advice and
It's
I'm asking
very
you to
serious.
stop speaking. Thank you. Now I know that I asked for and then I asked for against.
So, observing the debate, it was clear to me that the chair had asked for anyone to speak for. Then no one rose a hand. Then she asked for anyone to speak against. At that point, on the against, Councillor Johnson raised his hand, but he wanted to speak for. As he didn't want to speak against, the chair then called for the member who had moved the motion to respond. Now, can I just be clear to council members? Under the Local Government Act, the role of the presiding member is to maintain order in the chamber. I said, we are not here as staff as the police. That is a result for the presiding member. The presiding member can rule that a member no longer be heard on a matter. And that is clear as a right for the presiding member. That is in order to maintain order within the chamber. It is inappropriate to continue speaking when the presiding member, this is either a staff member or a member of council, if the presiding member has given such direction. So, Madam Mayor, the meeting is yours.
Thank you.
You can move now to close the debate. You have already moved that Councillor Johnson no longer be heard on the matter. It would be inappropriate, in my view, for further interjection.
Thank you, Mr.
So I'd
CEO.
like to move
Through
that
you, Mr.
the
Vote.
Mayor's ruling be dissented from.
Seconded.
I'll ask for a vote then. Those in favour?
Can we just check what the procedures are?
Dissent ruling. Those in favour of the dissent ruling, we had Councillor Bowman, Councillor Dawn, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Jones, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Prodovnik, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Hallett, and those against was Councillor Catalano, Councillor Ringo and myself. Carried.
If I can, through the chair.
Yes, thanks.
The chair, we're still at this point where the mayor has called for the mover to do the right of reply.
Councillor Bowman.
Just a question, that's what we've just dissented from. We've ruled that I can continue.
Deputy Mayor, I have moved. I have asked now for Councillor Bowman for his right of reply. Thank you. Councillor Bowman.
We've just moved to
through you.
dissent motion.
Through the chair, the dissent motion was in, again, the mayor's ruling that the member no longer be heard on the matter. That was what the dissent motion was against. We now then come back having that dissent motion be assented to. We're still at the point of debate where the chair had called for the mover to move the right of reply.
So can I ask a question? What is the dissent motion that I need to move to allow me to very reasonably speak on this important matter relating to Midland? I feel I'm just being shut up for no good reason, and this is just wasting time. So what dissent motion do I move to enable me to speak?
So through the chair, we need a second dissent motion, which deals with, this is a procedural motion, that the presiding member has called for the mover to do the right of reply, that motion be, or that decision be disagreed with.
So moved.
Seconded.
Then you need to have a vote on it now.
Those in favour? Councillor Dawn, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Prodovnik, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Howlett. Those against, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Ringo and myself.
Okay, so we're now back at the point where you can go back to debate. So you can call for a final speaker if you wish.
I'll ask, is anyone against the motion? Deputy Mayor.
For the motion.
For. No.
Through the chair, just call for against. After that, if no one speaks, you can say for.
Is anyone against? No. Is anyone for the motion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So, councillors, thank you for helping me with this. This is a very interesting and useful officer's report that has been brought before us. It is extremely useful because it finally explains, and I've asked on several occasions, the process for taking a right-of-way that is in private ownership of a deceased estate, where the deceased estate is lost in years and years of different people's wills and different trusts. So this finally explains the process. On many occasions, I've been asked by people how this can be done, and we've never had an explanation. So finally, this explains it. I do support this, the officer's recommendation, because it will enable the city to have flexibility in achieving the Midland Oval Redevelopment Master Plan. I know from experience of other people in the Woodbridge area and in the Bellevue area in particular, how difficult it is to deal with a right-of-way, a private right-of-way that is owned by a deceased estate that we don't know who owns it anymore. So, councillors, I'm in favour of this for that reason. I think it will facilitate the Midland Oval Redevelopment Master Plan. Thank you.
Right. I'll ask very clearly, is anyone against the motion? Is anyone who'd like to speak for the motion? No? Councillor Bowman, your right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm only going to be able to rebut Councillor Catalano. She's the only one that spoke against it. So just a couple of quick things in there. Councillor Catalano indicated something about roughshotting it over the people that own it. I see it as completely opposite. We're actually taking the financial burden off them, so it's actually a benefit for them. Councillor Johnson hit it spot on. If you look at the wills and the wills of the wills and the wills of the wills of the wills, all the wheels have fallen off. But this actually makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier. If we talk about they wouldn't want to give it up because they've got a right of way with no crossover, well, now they're going to have a maintained access that they don't have to pay for it, and they still don't need a crossover. But if you actually look, and I think this probably sums it up into page 280, and it talks about the Transfer of Land Act 1893, which I didn't see in the governance framework, but it talks about who is required to maintain the private right-of-way, and it clearly says, and it's correct because that's what the Transfer of Land Act says, it's the owners. So we're taking that away from the owners, but what we're doing is we're untangling that problem, which only gets more and more as time goes on with rights of ways.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'll now put that to the vote. Those in favour? So, Councillor Dawn, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Prodovnik, Deputy Mayor, and myself. 10. And those against? Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight, and Councillor Howlett. So the motion is carried 10-3. Thank you. And councillors, move on to 14.5.8, which is the sale of land rates and charges outstanding for more than 3 years on page 502. This item has been withdrawn by Councillor Budovnik. Councillor Budovnik, did you have an alternate motion?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I was just hoping that could be put up on the screen if that's in the system.
See if they have a copy. Yep.
I'm sorry. The proposed motion is that Council resolves to defer item 14.5.8, sale of land and rates and charges, outstanding more than 3 years to next month's Council meeting. And the reasons are, given the new information presented to councillors this week, it's clear that some individuals require additional time to access their superannuation and receive financial counselling. Also, some people on this list have now entered into an agreed payment plan, and this short extension will help others still working through the process.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dawn? Would anyone like to speak against? Question?
How does this comply with 8.11A of the meeting procedures local law?
So 8.1, was it 1A?
Yes.
A member who wishes to move an alternate motion is to give notice of that alternate motion 2 business days, yes. And I'll ask through, this is the explanation for the time.
Thank you, and through
Thank
the
you.
chair, you'll notice the operable words in that where possible. So the council member had already flagged 2 days prior to this. They were looking for additional information. They had been intending to withdraw the item. That additional information was only provided in the last 24 hours, circulated to all council members. It complies with the requirements of the meeting procedures.
Thank you. And I ask, is anyone against the motion? It's carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, move to 15.1. This is motions for which previous notice have been given. Councillor McCulloch, LifeVac devices for city facilities. Councillor McCulloch, if you'd like to please read out your notice of motion.
Thank you, Mayor. That Council resolves to 1. Request the CEO to prepare a report examining the benefits and costs for the city to install LifeVac airway clearance devices in all city managed facilities. The reason for my motion is to help prevent further deaths from airway occlusion within City of Swan managed facilities and places.
And do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones? Is anyone against? It's carried. And councillors move to 15.2, which is Councillor Budovnik's amendment to administrative process for the collection of shopping trolley fees. Councillor Budovnik, if you'd like to read out your notice of motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That Council resolve to 1. Require the City to amend the administrative practice for enforcement of the City of Swan Consolidated Amendment Local Law No. 2, 2023 as follows. A. Ensure small retailers are contacted but not immediately issued with a collection fee or issued with an infringement notice when the City collects or abandons shopping trolleys as per clause 11.7. B. Allow small retailers 2 weeks to collect their shopping trolleys after they have been advised the City has impounded their trolleys. C. If any relevant shopping trolley has not been collected within the 2-week period of clause 1B above, the proprietor will be required to pay the collection fee and the City may issue an infringement notice. Can we make it go down further? Point D, for the City to include this fee waiver step in our current process as a 6-month trial, and for that data on trolley collection to come back to Council in a report after that trial. 2, for this to apply only to small retailers as defined and certified by Consumer Protection as owned by up to 6 people, operating no more than 4 retail stores, having up to 25 people working at the same time across all stores, excluding apprentices, and 3, continue to implement ongoing discussions with affected retailers on solutions to reducing abandoned shopping trolleys. And the reasons? Overwhelmingly, the largest number of trolleys collected are from the big retailers Woolworths, Kmart, Coles, Big W, according to our data. The City impounds abandoned shopping trolleys and imposes a collection fee on retailers once impounded, but an additional step is needed to ensure businesses are not unfairly, or small businesses, are not unfairly financially penalised, as the issue of abandoned shopping trolleys is often beyond their control. Our current system relies on the SnapSend Solve app to report this issue to retailers, but relying on community reports via this app is ineffective, according to the owners of IGA in Stratton, Ellenbrook and Midland, who say that they have received no feedback through this system since the new laws were implemented. Creating a process that lets retailers know about abandoned trolleys and gives them an opportunity to organise collection before fines are issued is a more fair system that doesn't put unnecessary financial pressure on our small business operators. Currently, the city only collects 1 day per week and has a stipulated day and time that retailers can attend the operations centre to collect their trolleys. So in reality, a 2-week time frame only allows the retailers, I should say 8 hours to get their trolleys because it's 4 hours a week. Implementing this fee waiver as a trial gives the city the opportunity to evaluate what works, what doesn't, and how we are progressing. This more collaborative and practical approach ensures we better work together with our business sector, treating them as part of the solution instead of the problem.
Thank you, Councillor Prodovnik. And do I have a seconder? Councillor McCulloch? Is anyone against? Do you wish to debate it? Thank you.
In 2020, Council began collecting abandoned trolleys, and that trial was expanded citywide in 2021. During the 2-year trials, retailers were notified about trolley locations and they could retrieve them before they were impounded at no cost. In 2022, a new law removed that notification, and small businesses say it's not working. They want a fair chance to collect their trolleys first to avoid unnecessary fees. This motion restores that common sense approach. It gives small businesses a heads up before charging them. Most abandoned trolleys come from big retailers like Woolworths, Kmart, Coles and Big W. This motion makes small changes that better support small businesses. So what does this motion actually do? It keeps the current system unchanged for big retailers, which is most of the trolleys we collect. It gives small businesses a chance to collect their trolleys before being charged. It introduces a simple exemption process which requires consumer protection to confirm their small business status. And it provides a 6-month fee waiver for small businesses, which allows council to assess this new approach. So why does it matter? Small business owners have told us the system isn't working for them and they do want to be part of the solution. This motion allows them to collect their trolleys within an 8-hour time frame, and if they don't do this, they'll have to pay the fee. Even the council report acknowledges that a one-size-fits-all approach isn't fair. Let's trial this for 6 months, collect data and see if it improves our system. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Prodovnik. Councillor McCulloch as the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, this does make sense. I had numerous conversations with small business retailers and managers ringing to clarify aspects of the trolley system. Fairly early on, I could see that and identify that there were gaps in the process that was causing angst, frustrations, and I suppose small business owners to not see the city in a great light. Even on further investigations, the SnapSend Solve process in regards to the city and some of the small business owners was flawed. Some of them weren't even sure how that process was to be managed. I could see that trolleys could possibly have been sitting in one spot, whether it be 5 minutes, 5 days, or 5 weeks. And they may not have been alerted to the fact that they were there, not necessarily collected, or small business owners being issued infringements for them. so many things that enabled me to see that a tweak is possibly all it might take to get it right and to make sure that we are continually looking after our small businesses. I just spent a considerable amount of time yesterday completing the city's market business scorecard as a small business owner. Even within that survey, it caused me to reflect and actually look at this motion and what Councillor Prodovnik was aiming to achieve through it to support our small businesses. This scorecard, this survey asked questions about how small business owners believe the city is listening to, hearing, supporting. And so this is it. In effect, this is where the rubber hits the road with being able to identify some gaps in a process that we have adopted and to get it right, to tweak it, to listen, to hear further feedback. And sometimes these processes with the feedback, they're not the same. There is no one recipe for any process, for any circumstance. So please support Councillor Prodovnik.
Now I'll ask, are there any councillors like to speak against the motion? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Madam Mayor, I agree with the intent of Councillor Prodovnik and Councillor McCulloch. Gee, we're going around this the difficult way and the hard way. I nearly fell asleep listening to all the amendments, the alternatives, the additions and all that. We're making it harder and harder for ourselves. Now, councillors, don't forget, we all voted for this change. The shopping trolleys get picked up 1 day a week. I won't comment on that. So the 6 days you can go pick it up. I don't have a problem not getting the IGAs at the moment. But what this motion does is, if I was an IGA business owner, I'd go, you beauty, I don't need shopping trolley collection people now, because the City of Swan's going to collect all my trolleys for me, not charge me, and so that cost expense for the city versus the income will get bigger and bigger and bigger. It doesn't make sense. The process, well, the changes don't make sense. Small changes, I'm not sure. I was reading about ageism and all that. Is this shopism? I don't know. But it's a simple solution, a very simple solution. Why don't we just ask staff, don't pick up IGA trolleys? We then won't pick up the IGA trolleys. They won't get fined. They can pick up the trolleys. There's no cost, because at the moment, every IGA shopping trolley we're going to pick up and not charge a cost is going to cost the residents and ratepayers who've been complaining all the time about abandoned shopping trolleys money. So the easy solution is don't pick it up, and we'll know there's a problem if all the complaints we keep getting about trolleys all turn to be IGA, then we've got a problem. But I expect we won't hear about abandoned IGA shopping trolleys. That's the simple solution. Don't make all this, because that amendment is going to cost money. Councillors, we have to balance everything, and this is a better way of balancing it. Staff, you're limited. You can't pick up all the trolleys at the moment. So just go past the ones that say IGA and pick up the Coles and Woolies ones. There's no cost then to the IGA people. Tick, that's what I see the intent is. We can then go spend more time on the 1 day a week picking up all the Coles and Woolies. Solution. That's why I actually agree with the intent, but I just think we're making this so complicated that we just instead say, staff, when you go out 1 day a week, don't pick up IGA trolleys.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'll ask anyone like to speak for the motion.
Question.
Question, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I guess to the relevant member of staff. I've got a copy of the local law here, and it says, section 4(5), if a shopping trolley is found in a public place other than an area set aside for the storage of shopping trolleys, The local government may notify either verbally or in a written form the retailer whose name is marked on the trolley of the location of the trolley. Doesn't that have the same effect as Councillor Prodovnik's motion?
Through you, Mr Bishop.
Means that they can just tell them and they can go and pick it up.
Through you, Madam Mayor, essentially that's the process which we have anyway in parallel and have had in previous years to date. Is a reporting system. It's just that they're not always getting picked up.
Well, that's why we need some kind of incentive payment scheme. Is that right?
That's essentially why we ended at this point. We tried a number of different ways, and there is still the option. We do report, we encourage, and we put out education material to encourage staff, members of the public to report any abandoned trolleys seen via SnapSend Solve or Trolley Tracker that goes direct to the retailer. Obviously, they are encouraged in the first instance to pick up themselves, and obviously the reason for the local law coming in was because that wasn't sufficient. And if there is no need for us to pick up, it is our preference not to do any trolley pickups at all.
I'll ask, does anyone like to speak for the motion? Does anyone like to speak against the motion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, councillors, I've had a careful look at this, and I wrote out a speech. I read through the speech and I thought, that's strange, this speech, it's not a very good speech. And I think basically that reflects the difficulty of the problem we're trying to solve. Look, councils, after many years of trying to solve the problem of the proliferation of abandoned shopping trolleys in the Midland and Mid-Valley area, we recently adopted a local law to control shopping trolleys. So now it seems we're proposing to undo all that good work just as it's bearing fruit, that fruit being a shopping trolley-free Midland and Mid-Val. If we're going to make a change like this, then the way to make the change is to amend the local law to exclude small businesses from the fine or even the pickup fee. So how do we define a small business? Well, I would suggest that the ATO definition of a small business is used, which is $10 million in revenue or less. So revenue is total sales, also called turnover. So
point of order. Is this...
Just one moment, Councillor
Sorry,
Prodovnik.
is this,
Deputy Mayor, just one moment. Can you please give me a point of order, page and reference, please?
Just a question, I might be wrong, but is
that was a point of order, so I just need the page and the reference.
Point of order 6.8. I just want to query
6.8, I'll just give everyone a chance to have a look for 6.8.
Just
and what was
because-
6.8?
Well, it just sounds like Councillor Johnson's now talking
You
about...
need to actually refer to
Oh,
it,
sorry.
sorry. Yep, that's how quick
Sorry.
you have to be.
6.8 relevance. A member must restrict his or her remarks to the motion under discussion. It sounds like Councillor Johnson is now discussing an alternative to the motion. Is that?
Thank you. Thank you. I'll uphold that point of order. Deputy Mayor, if you could just keep to the point of relevance, please.
we're talking about shopping trolleys. The local law makes it clear that the fee and fine approach applies to all businesses, and if we start to apply it selectively, then I would expect Coles and Woolies to want the same treatment. Maybe they could claim apprehended bias. The motion appears to involve itself in the detail of the city's operations for the collection of shopping trolleys. Presumably, this is a change to a city management practice which council has never tried directly to change before. The motion also appears to be tailored to one particular retailer. So the retailer has a revenue of $40 million. That's the total sales of the business.
Point of order.
And what was your point of order?
That's incorrect. So whatever the point is, that's
So what
not
point
correct.
of order is that?
Well, potentially relevance or incorrect.
I
It's
just
not-
need you to quote. Sorry, which one?
There's one that's to do with...
You just have to know what it is, I'm afraid, so I
Accuracy?
can't withhold it if you haven't got it. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, if you could continue.
sorry.
Sorry, I have to get Deputy Mayor to continue. We need to
Thank
have
you.
those point of orders ready to go.
Yeah,
Sorry.
the $40 million was what Mr. Pham actually told us himself, so that's a fact. So retail businesses operate, as many of us know, on small margins of around 3%. So the profit of this business would be only about $1.2 million. Only
Point of
$1.2
order.
million.
Just one moment, Deputy Mayor. What's your point of order, Councillor?
I've got the point of order here. It's false or misleading information. This...
Sorry, can you just quote which one, please?
Sorry, yes. It's 7.2F.
7.2F.
That's right. The presentation of false or misleading information. This motion does not just...
What was the point of order, though, in reference to the misleading information?
Councillor Johnson is saying that this motion is tailored towards supporting one retailer. It's not. It's tailored towards
I
supporting
think he'd
small
already moved on
businesses.
from that, thanks. He was on to quoting $40,000 and then
But
sorry,
that's-
$40 million and a $1.2 million
But that's false and misleading, because it's not about one
I think
retailer.
Mr. Pham definitely said at the council meeting on Wednesday night that it was 40 million.
Through
And then
you, Madam Mayor, that's correct.
Yes.
But my point is that Councillor Johnson is now going down a tangent where he's focusing on just IGAs when this motion is about small businesses.
Thank
it's
you.
not IGA.
I'll ask him to keep to the relevance.
Yeah,
Deputy
look,
Mayor.
I'm
You
sort
have
of
1
talking about
minute
the subject
remaining.
of it. Okay, look, councillors, rather than read the rest of the speech out, the $37 trolley collection fee is not going to break the bank if you've got a $40 million business. My view is that we should monitor the performance of the local law, get a report to council after the first 6 months, and if we need to make a change, we should amend the local law so that it's fair and transparent to all. At this stage, the local law is not broke. We don't need to fix it, and we appear to have a shopping trolley free Midlands, so in my view, it's working well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, I'm going to ask if there's anyone like to speak for the motion. Very clearly, I'm asking if you'd like to speak for the motion. If there's no one, I'll ask councillors if anyone like to speak against the motion. If there's no for or against, then I'll be the last person to speak to the motion. Thank you. I'll hand the chair over to the Deputy Mayor. Councillors, this is a really slightly sticky situation we're in here. At the beginning of commencing as the Mayor, one of the first things I wanted to do was to start that process of getting those shopping trolleys sorted out and cleaned up. And that wasn't to do with the local law that was also being conducted at the same time. It took me nearly a year to get a meeting with Middlegate Shopping Centre, and they were great coming on board. I know staff had conducted meetings with local businesses. I'm certainly not here to, disadvantage any small supermarkets such as IGA. The whole issue over the many years that I've lived and worked here, and not just in the City of Swan, is this issue of shopping trolleys. To take the basic problem, which is shopping trolleys that litter everywhere. So when I go to Midland Gate, I'm not picking on any supermarkets, and I see shopping trolleys that have been stacked at least 4 metres high, and I think to myself, is that going to fall? Is that going to damage my car? Is that going to damage someone else's car? Is that an injury for a shopping trolley collector person that's got to get those structures down?
Point of order.
Okay.
6.81 relevance. We're talking about collection of trolleys, not trolleys being 4 stories high or 4 trolleys high.
Councillor Bowman, can you just give me that section again with the page number, please, so I can...
Yeah, 6.8 subsection 1.
6.8 subsection 1.
Page
Relevance.
17 on mine.
A member must restrict his or her remarks to the motion or discussion or to a personal explanation of point of order. Councillor Bowman, my view is that the Mayor is talking about shopping trolleys and therefore it's relevant. Thank you. Carry on, Madam Mayor.
So the discussions and the background to this is that we have tried to get the shopping trolleys collected and picked up and cleaned up. Now, whether that's through the local law or whether it's from conversations with staff, with retailers, we have tried our best at this stage to work with retailers. I have had one letter from Mr. Pham at IGA. He was offered a meeting. He did not take up the opportunity to come and have a meeting, even though I reached out again and I asked last Wednesday. I have not had a formal meeting with him in any capacity. I shop regularly at Midland IGA, nearly every night. And I can tell you that I understand the difficulty of being able to keep trolleys into a small supermarket whereby the car park is not owned by that particular retailer. We know that there are people who can't have access to shopping trolleys and cars and need to take them home. But if we're asking big supermarket chains to put in a locking system and a barrier device and the coin operated, giving that option to all providers, if we go down this route, and I'd like to, but then I'm favouring one small supermarket chain over the whole problem. We're trying to work towards solutions of, is it the locking barrier? Is it the coin operated system? Is it surveillance in the car park? If we support this motion, then we're saying, okay, well, we're going to give small retail businesses an advantage over the bigger supermarket chains. If I was a business owner and I owned a trolley and it was worth $250 to $700, that's my property. I am responsible for that property. No, you can't stop people taking it out the car park. You need to find ways within your own business to do that. He has a 6-ton truck to be able to go and pick up trolleys. It is not the City of Swan's responsibility to pick up somebody else's property. That's our ratepayers paying for us to buy a vehicle, us to buy the trailer, us to put our staff on Mondays to pick up
Point of
somebody
order.
else's property. Thank you.
And your point of order is?
7.2D, page 19, repetitive.
Look, Councillor Dawn, as the Mayor's finished speaking, I don't think we need to deal with that point of order. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, I will now ask for the right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I disagree, it's harder. This is a very small amendment and it will only affect a very small group in the City of Swan. It won't cost a lot of money. The vast majority of trolleys we collect are from the big owners, the big retailers, and this remains the same, unchanged in this motion. Our local law is in effect. This motion just proposes a small amendment. We are not undoing any good work. I thank Councillor Bowman for his suggestion, and should this motion be supported, there's an opportunity to discuss more options once we have the data, including the suggestions that he has made. What I'm asking Council to support tonight is a very small change to our current system that will better support small businesses who want to work with us. Again, it's important to state the vast majority of trolleys collected will continue to be collected if this motion is supported. Councillor McCulloch talked about the city seeking feedback from small businesses in a survey. And it should be noted that when we changed our local law, we decided to apply a fee. We never trialled a fee paying process before. So it's important to listen to feedback from retailers, particularly when we ran a trial where no fee was paid and replaced it by a fee paying process. We never trialled a fee paying process. So if there's problems with a fee paying system, it will only become apparent once it's implemented. And that's why small retailers speaking out need to be listened to. They're telling us it's a problem, and this small change to our current process will address the issues they've raised. And some of those issues were referenced again in Councillor McCulloch's debate. And on a final note, I just want to say that the Mayor has mentioned other options, and I understand that the Mayor is passionate about those. But I would like to draw your attention to a letter sent to all councillors by Ben from IGA in Stratton and Ellenbrook. And he addresses this, I quote, "Coin-operated trolley locks will send customers away to a business that does not have trolley locks. There's many studies that show an overwhelming majority of customers will shop elsewhere. When coin-operated locks are introduced, a simple Google search will show these articles. A trolley containment system is extremely expensive. I looked into this around 2021 for my business. At the time, the cost was around $50,000 and there were significant works needed to install the barrier that stops the trolleys from leaving the shopping centre. I asked my landlord for approval, which was declined because it involved major disruptions and works to the shopping centre car park in Stratton. Identification or tracking systems are not cost effective given the value of a shopping trolley. If the city suggests that we implement some or all of these mechanisms, then the costs would be significant. This suggestion by the city's officers says that the city does not want small businesses in the city and would rather move our customers to shop at the big retailers by suggesting we implement these expensive systems that will drive our customers away." End of quote. This motion says let's make a small amendment to better support small businesses and try it out for 6 months. Let's then have a look at the data.
Councillor Prodovnik.
Oh, sorry, can I just have one sentence?
That's 30 seconds over.
Okay, please support this motion.
Thank you. Councillors now put that to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Catalano, Councillor Dawn, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Podovnik and Councillor Howlett. And those against is Councillor Bowman, Councillor Knight, Deputy Mayor and myself. So the motion is carried. Thank you. And that was 8-5.
9-4.
I've got 9-4. Okay.
We're at 2.13, but as
Yes.
there's only one item, I might suggest you don't put to council, don't have a recess and just go through the last item.
So councillors, we move to the confidential item. And so we only have one more item left, so I suggest that we just keep going, unless anyone is... Yes, thank you. So for those watching at home, we are just going behind closed doors to discuss a confidential item. Is there anyone against? No, it's thank you.
Jones and Bowman.
Offline. To those watching at home, we've come out from behind closed doors. We had a confidential item, which was item 16.1, and the resolution was a request for rent rebate Child Australia, which was carried. Was carried. So the officer's recommendation was adopted. And I will just read that out for you. That council resolved to 1, not approve the annual rental relief request from Child Australia commencing 1st of July 2024 and expiring on the 30th of June 2025. 2, advise Child Australia that the city, A, has previously provided considerable rental relief to the organisation, B, recognises the benefit that Child Australia provides to the community by applying a community lease rather than a commercial lease, and C, has not been provided with adequate information to justify the rental relief. Councillors, this brings us to notice of motions for consideration at the following meeting, if given during the meeting. Deadline for submissions will be 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the 18th of February 2025. And that brings us to the end of the evening. That concludes tonight's council meeting, and I hereby close the meeting at 8:33 p.m.